What if I told you that the poorest child in Chicago held the secret that would make a Hollywood mogul cry? What if a single act of kindness from a 7-year-old boy could expose the darkest truth about human nature? This is not just a story. This is a mirror held up to every person who has ever wondered, would I pass the test? Would you steal $5,000 if no one was watching? Or would you do something that would change a stranger's life forever? Stay with me until the end of this story, because what happens in the final 10 minutes will leave you speechless. This is the story of a man who had everything and a boy who had nothing, and the day their worlds collided in a library in downtown Chicago. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness still exists in this world, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss these powerful stories. And drop a comment below telling me, would you take the money or would you walk away? Let's see how honest we really are. Now let's begin. The rain hammered against the tall windows of the penthouse library like an army trying to break through. Inside, everything was warm, expensive, and perfectly silent. This was the private sanctuary of Mr. Benjamin Crawford, one of the wealthiest men in Chicago, Illinois. At 78 years old, Benjamin owned half the skyscrapers on Michigan Avenue, controlled 3 international shipping companies, and had investments in technology firms across Silicon Valley. His fortune was estimated at over $2 billion. But Benjamin Crawford was not happy. He sat motionless in his favorite leather chair, a deep burgundy wingback that had cost more than most people's cars. His eyes were closed. His chest rose and fell in slow, deliberate breaths. To anyone watching through the glass doors, he looked like an exhausted old man taking his afternoon rest. But Benjamin was not sleeping. He was hunting. This was a game Benjamin played regularly, and he had been playing it for nearly 20 years. It started after his second wife divorced him and took half his fortune. Then his business partner embezzled $3 million. Then his oldest son forged his signature to access a trust fund early. One by one, people had betrayed him. His secretary stole his credit card information. His driver sold stories about him to tabloid newspapers. Even his private chef had been caught sneaking expensive bottles of wine out of the cellar. Benjamin had come to a dark conclusion. Every human being was fundamentally selfish. Given the opportunity, anyone would steal, lie, or cheat if they thought they could get away with it. Trust, he believed, was a fantasy sold by naive people who had never been burned. So Benjamin devised a test. Several times a year he would stage a scenario. He would pretend to be asleep and leave something valuable within reach, cash, jewelry, rare books, and wait to see what people would do. Sometimes he tested his employees. Sometimes he tested contractors or delivery people. He had caught a housekeeper stealing a silver picture frame. He had caught a young intern pocketing $200 from his desk. Every single time, without fail, people took the bait. It confirmed what Benjamin already believed. Humanity was rotten to the core. Today's test subject was new. Her name was Maria Santos, a 32-year-old woman from the south side of Chicago who had been hired as part of the household cleaning staff just 4 weeks ago. Benjamin had done his research. Maria was a widow. Her husband, Carlos, had died 3 years ago in a construction accident when scaffolding collapsed at a building site in the Loop. He left behind nothing but debt and a young son. Maria worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads in a cramped studio apartment in Pilsen. Benjamin had placed the trap carefully. On the mahogany side table next to his chair sat a thick manila envelope. It was open, unsealed, and visibly stuffed with cash. Inside were 50 crisp $100 bills, totaling $5,000. The bills were slightly fanned out, as if someone had been counting them and then carelessly left them behind. It looked like the mistake of a forgetful old man who had too much money to keep track of. Benjamin waited, keeping his breathing slow and even, his body perfectly still. He heard the library door creak open. Footsteps entered the room, 2 sets of footsteps. One was the familiar shuffle of Maria's worn canvas shoes. The other was lighter, smaller, hesitant. A child. Benjamin had not expected this. His head of household, Mrs. Thompson, had mentioned that Maria requested special permission to bring her son to work today because the Chicago public schools were closed due to a burst pipe emergency. Mrs. Thompson had reluctantly agreed, warning Maria that if Mr. Crawford saw the child, both of them would be terminated immediately. Through his closed eyelids, Benjamin listened carefully. "Sit right here, Daniel," Maria whispered urgently in Spanish, then switched to English. "Do not move from this spot. Do not touch anything in this room. Mr. Crawford is sleeping in that chair. If you wake him up, Mama will lose her job and we will have nowhere to go. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mama," a small voice replied. The voice was soft, cautious, frightened. "I have to clean the dining room and polish the silver," Maria continued, her voice shaking with anxiety. "I will be back in 15 minutes. Stay on this rug. Do not move. Promise me." "I promise, Mama." "Good boy." Benjamin heard the door close softly. Maria was gone. Now it was just him and the boy. For a long moment there was only silence. The fire crackled in the marble fireplace. The antique clock on the mantel ticked steadily. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the city. Benjamin waited for the inevitable. Children, he believed, were even less trustworthy than adults. They had no impulse control, no sense of consequences. A 7-year-old boy would see the money and take it without hesitation, but Daniel did not move. 5 minutes passed. Benjamin's back was beginning to ache from holding his position. He wanted to shift in his chair, but he forced himself to remain still. He was committed to the performance. Then he heard it, the soft rustle of fabric. The boy was standing up. "Here it comes," Benjamin thought. "The child is making his move." Small footsteps approached the chair. They were slow, cautious, almost timid. The boy stopped right beside Benjamin's armrest. Benjamin could sense the child's presence, could almost feel the small body leaning in to examine the old man's face. Benjamin braced himself for the sound of paper rustling, for the quick grab of tiny hands snatching the cash. But that sound never came. Instead, Benjamin felt something completely unexpected. A small, cold hand touched his arm. The touch was gentle, barely there, like a butterfly landing on his sleeve. It was not the touch of someone checking if he was awake. It was the touch of someone concerned. The boy withdrew his hand. Benjamin heard a soft, worried sigh. Then came a whisper, so quiet it was almost lost beneath the sound of the rain. "Mister," the boy said softly in English. "Are you okay?" Benjamin did not respond. He kept up the act, letting out a low, rumbling snore to maintain the illusion of deep sleep. What happened next stunned him. Benjamin heard the sound of a zipper. The boy was taking off his jacket. Why? What was this child doing? Then Benjamin felt something warm and soft drape over his legs. The boy had placed his jacket, a thin, threadbare windbreaker, across Benjamin's knees like a blanket. The jacket was damp from the rain outside and smelled faintly of detergent and childhood. The boy carefully smoothed the fabric, tucking it gently around the old man's legs. "You looked cold," Daniel whispered to the sleeping man. "My mama says when people are cold we should help them stay warm, even if they are strangers." Benjamin's heart, a heart that had been hardened by 2 decades of betrayal, skipped a beat. This made no sense. The boy had not looked at the money. He had looked at Benjamin. He had seen a cold, elderly person and responded with compassion. Benjamin risked opening his left eye just a crack, a tiny sliver of vision hidden behind his lashes. What he saw shook him to his core. The boy was small for 7 years old, with black hair that needed a trim and brown eyes that were too serious for a child. He wore faded jeans with patches on the knees and a t-shirt that had been washed so many times the graphic on the front was barely visible. His shoes were old sneakers with duct tape holding the sole to the upper. Daniel turned his attention to the table. Benjamin tensed. Here it comes. Now the boy will take the money. But Daniel did not reach for the envelope. Instead, he reached past it. He had noticed that the envelope was hanging slightly off the edge of the table, in danger of falling to the floor. With careful hands, the boy pushed the envelope back toward the center of the table, away from the edge, securing it next to the lamp. "Safe now," Daniel whispered. Then the boy noticed something else. A leather journal had fallen from Benjamin's lap earlier when he sat down. It was lying on the oriental rug near the fireplace. Daniel walked over, picked up the journal, dusted it off with his sleeve, and placed it carefully on the table beside the money. Then, without another word, Daniel returned to his spot on the rug in the corner of the library. He sat down, pulled his knees to his chest, wrapped his thin arms around himself, and began to shiver. He had given his only jacket to a Hollywood Mogul stranger. Benjamin lay frozen in his chair, his mind completely blank. For the first time in 20 years, someone had passed his test. No, it was more than that. The boy had not just refused to steal. The boy had given. Benjamin's cynicism, built up like layers of armor around his heart, began to crack. "Why?" Benjamin screamed internally. "They are poor. I know they are poor. I have seen the address where they live. Why did he not take the money?" Before Benjamin could process this, the library door burst open. Maria rushed into the room, her face pale with panic. She had clearly run from the other end of the mansion. She looked at the corner and saw Daniel sitting there without his jacket, shivering. Then she looked at the chair and saw her son's cheap, rain-soaked jacket draped across the legs of the most powerful man in Chicago. Her hands flew to her mouth, stifling a scream. Her eyes darted to the table. She saw the money, she saw the jacket. She assumed the worst. "Daniel!" Maria hissed in a sharp whisper, rushing to her son and grabbing him by the arm. "What did you do? Did you touch him? Did you touch that money?" Daniel looked up at his mother with wide, frightened eyes. "No, Mama." He was shivering. "I just wanted to help him stay warm. And the envelope was going to fall, so I moved it." "Oh my God," Maria whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He is going to wake up. He is going to fire us. We are ruined, Daniel. I told you not to move." Maria frantically pulled the jacket off Benjamin's legs, her hands shaking so violently she nearly knocked over the lamp. "I am sorry," she whispered to the sleeping man, even though she thought he could not hear her. "Please do not wake up. Please, please do not wake up." Benjamin felt the jacket being yanked away. He felt the mother's terror radiating from her like heat from a furnace. She was not afraid of a stranger. She was afraid of him. She was terrified of the man who had so much power that a simple act of kindness from a child could be seen as a crime. In that moment, Benjamin realized what he had become. He had become a monster. He decided it was time to stop pretending. Benjamin let out a loud, exaggerated groan and shifted in his chair. Maria froze like a deer in headlights. She clutched Daniel to her chest and backed toward the door, her eyes wide with fear. Benjamin slowly opened his eyes. He blinked a few times, squinting at the light from the fire. He looked around the room with a confused expression. Then his gaze landed on the terrified woman and the small boy by the door. He put on his best irritated expression. His bushy grey eyebrows drew together in a scowl. "What is all this noise?" Benjamin growled, his voice rough and cold. "Cannot a man rest in his own home without being disturbed?" I am so sorry, Mr. Crawford," Maria stammered, tears streaming down her face. She bowed her head, unable to meet his eyes. "I was just cleaning. This is my son, Daniel. The schools were closed today. I had no choice. We are leaving right now. Please, sir, do not fire me. I need this job. I will take him outside. He will not bother you again." Benjamin stared at them. He looked at the envelope of money sitting on the table, exactly where Daniel had moved it to keep it safe. He looked at the boy, who was trembling, not from cold now, but from fear. Benjamin sat up straighter in his chair. He reached over and picked up the envelope. He tapped it against his palm. Maria squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the accusation she was certain was coming. "Boy," Benjamin said in a booming voice. Daniel peeked out from behind his mother's leg. "Yes, sir?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Come here," Benjamin commanded. Maria tightened her grip on Daniel's shoulder. "Sir, he did not mean to—" "I said," Benjamin raised his voice, "come here." Daniel stepped away from his mother. He walked slowly toward the leather chair, his small hands trembling at his sides. He stopped directly in front of Benjamin, his head barely reaching the armrest. Benjamin leaned forward, bringing his face close to the child's. He stared into Daniel's eyes, searching for deception, searching for the greed he was so certain existed in everyone. "Did you put your jacket on me?" Benjamin asked. Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Why would you do that?" Benjamin's voice was sharp. I am a stranger. I am rich. I have closets full of expensive coats upstairs. Why would you give me your jacket?" Daniel looked down at his worn-out shoes. Then he looked back up at Benjamin with those serious brown eyes. "Because you looked cold, sir," Daniel said simply. "And my mama says that when someone is cold, you should help them. It does not matter if they are rich or poor, cold is cold." Benjamin stared at the boy. Cold is cold. It was such a simple truth, spoken by a child who had almost nothing. Benjamin turned his gaze to Maria. She was holding her breath, tears running down her cheeks. "What is your name, son?" Benjamin asked, his voice softening just slightly. "Daniel, sir. Daniel Santos." Benjamin nodded slowly. He looked at the money in his hand. A plan began to form in his mind. The test was not over. It had only just begun. This boy had passed the first level, the level of honesty. But Benjamin needed to know more. He needed to know if this child's goodness was real, or if it was just a performance, a strategy taught by a clever mother to manipulate wealthy people. Benjamin shoved the envelope into the inner pocket of his jacket. Then he returned to his role as the irritable, cold-hearted Hollywood mogul. "You woke me up," Benjamin grunted. "I hate being woken up." Maria let out a choked sob. "We are leaving, sir, right now." "No," Benjamin said sharply. "You are not leaving." "We are leaving, sir," Maria repeated, grabbing Daniel's hand and turning toward the door. Her voice was shaking. "I am sorry we disturbed you." "Stop!" Benjamin's voice cracked like a whip across the silent library. Maria froze. She did not dare take another step. She turned around slowly, her face drained of all color. "I did not say you could leave," Benjamin said, his voice cold and commanding. He pointed a shaking finger at the leather chair where he had been sitting. "Look at this," he said. Maria looked. There was a small, dark, damp spot on the burgundy leather where Daniel's wet jacket had rested against the material. "My chair," Benjamin said, his voice dripping with manufactured anger. "This is Italian leather. It was custom made in Milan. It costs $12,000, and now it is wet. It is ruined." I will dry it, sir," Maria said desperately. "I will get a towel right away." "Water stains leather," Benjamin lied. He stood up, leaning heavily on his cane, towering over the frightened mother and her son. "You cannot just dry it. It needs to be professionally restored. That will cost at least $1,000. Benjamin watched them closely. This was the second part of his test. He wanted to see if the mother would turn on the boy. He wanted to see if she would scream at Daniel for costing her money she did not have. He wanted to see if the pressure would break their bond. Maria looked at the wet spot, then back at Benjamin. More tears poured down her face. "Mr. Crawford, please," she begged. "I do not have $1,000. I have not even been paid for this month yet. Please take it out of my wages. I will work for free for as long as it takes. Just please do not hurt my boy. Please." Benjamin's eyes narrowed. She was offering to work without pay. That was unusual, but he was not satisfied yet. He looked down at Daniel. "And you," Benjamin said to the child, "you caused this damage. What do you have to say for yourself?" Daniel stepped forward. He was not crying. His small face was very serious, filled with a determination that seemed too old for his age. He reached into his pocket. "I do not have $1,000, Daniel said softly. "But I have this." Daniel pulled his hand out of his pocket and opened his small fingers. In the center of his palm sat a small toy car. It was made of die-cast metal, painted bright red, but the paint was chipped and faded. One of the wheels was missing. The car was clearly old, battered and worthless to anyone else. But the way Daniel held it, with both hands, carefully, reverently, it looked like he was holding a priceless treasure. "This is lightning," Daniel explained, his voice trembling but steady. "He is the fastest race car in the whole world. He was my papa's before he went to heaven. Mama gave it to me so I would always remember him." Maria gasped. "Daniel, no, you do not have to." "It is okay, Mama," Daniel said bravely. He looked up at the Hollywood mogul with tears beginning to form in his eyes but refusing to fall. "You can have lightning to pay for the chair. He is my best friend. But you are angry, and I do not want you to be angry at my mama. It is my fault, so you can have him." Daniel reached up and carefully placed the broken toy car on the mahogany table, right next to the leather journal. Benjamin stared at the toy. He felt like someone had punched him in the chest. He looked at the envelope in his pocket, $5,000 in cash. Then he looked at the three-wheeled toy car sitting on the table. This boy who had nothing was offering his most precious possession, the only thing he had left of his father, to save his mother from punishment. Benjamin had 3 sons of his own. They were adults now, living in Los Angeles, New York, and Miami. They never called him unless they wanted something: a new car, a vacation home, an investment in their latest business idea. They took and took and took, and they never gave anything back. But this child, this poor fatherless boy from the south side of Chicago, was willing to give up everything he had. Benjamin's heart, which had been frozen for so many years, shattered. The silence in the room was deafening. The rain continued to pound against the windows. The fire crackled. The clock ticked. Benjamin picked up the toy car with trembling hands. "You," Benjamin whispered, his voice no longer a growl but something soft, broken. "You would give me this for a wet chair?" "Yes, sir," Daniel said. His voice cracked. "Is it enough?" Benjamin closed his eyes. He thought about his own sons, who would never sacrifice anything for him. He thought about all the people who had stolen from him, lied to him, betrayed him. And then he thought about this boy standing in front of him, offering a treasure. "Yes," Benjamin whispered, opening his eyes. They were wet with tears. "Yes, Daniel. It is enough. It is more than enough." Benjamin slowly sat back down in his chair. The act was over. He could not pretend anymore. He felt exhausted, not from age, but from the crushing weight of his own shame. "Mrs. Santos," Benjamin said quietly, his entire tone changed. It was no longer the voice of an angry Hollywood mogul. It was the voice of a tired, lonely old man. "Please, sit down." Maria looked confused by the sudden change in his voice. "Sir?" "I said sit down," Benjamin repeated, then softened his words. "Please, just sit. Stop looking at me like I am going to destroy you." Maria hesitantly sat on the edge of the sofa, pulling Daniel onto her lap protectively. Benjamin looked at the toy car in his hand. He turned it over, examining the missing wheel, the chipped paint, the worn edges from years of play. "I need to tell you something," Benjamin said, staring at the floor. "The chair is not ruined. It is just water. It will dry in an hour." Maria exhaled sharply. "Oh, thank God." And Benjamin continued, looking up at them with shame in his eyes. "I was not asleep." Maria's eyes widened. You were not?" "No." Benjamin shook his head slowly. "I was pretending. I left that money on the table on purpose. I wanted to see if you would steal it. I wanted to catch you. I've been testing people like this for years. I am a bitter old man, Mrs. Santos. I thought everyone was a thief. I thought everyone had a price." Maria looked hurt. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "You were testing us, like we are criminals." "Yes," Benjamin admitted, his voice breaking. "And I am sorry. I was wrong." He pointed at Daniel, who was watching him with wide, innocent eyes. "But him," Benjamin's voice cracked completely. "He did not take the money. He covered me because he thought I was cold. He moved the envelope so it would not fall. And then he offered me his father's car." Benjamin wiped a tear from his wrinkled cheek. He did not care that his employee was watching him cry. "I have everything," Benjamin whispered. "I have vast wealth. I have houses, companies, cars, art collections. But I am poor. You have nothing, Mrs. Santos. But you raised a king." Chapter 2. The Proposition. Benjamin stood up from his chair. It was a painful movement for his 78-year-old knees, but he did it anyway. He walked over to the fireplace, took a deep breath to steady himself, and turned back to face Maria and Daniel. "The test is over," Benjamin announced, "and you both passed." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the thick manila envelope. He walked over to Maria and held it out to her. "Take this," Benjamin said. Maria shook her head violently. "No, sir. I do not want your money. I just want to work. I want to earn my keep honestly. Please, Benjamin said softly, his voice pleading now instead of commanding. Take it. It is not charity. It is payment. Payment for the lesson your son just taught me. Maria hesitated. She looked at the envelope, then down at Daniel's worn-out shoes, with the duct tape holding them together. Please, Benjamin repeated, buy the boy a winter coat, buy him new shoes, buy yourself a bed that does not hurt your back when you wake up. Take it. With shaking hands, Maria reached out and took the envelope. Thank you, Mr. Crawford, thank you so much. Do not thank me yet, Benjamin said. A small, genuine smile touched his lips for the first time in years. I have a business proposition for you. For Daniel, actually. Daniel looked up. For me, sir? Yes, Benjamin said. He held up the little toy car, Lightning. I am going to keep this. You gave him to me as payment, and a deal is a deal. Daniel's face fell slightly, but he nodded with dignity. Okay, a deal is a deal. But, Benjamin continued, kneeling down with difficulty so he was at eye level with the 7-year-old, I cannot drive a car with 3 wheels. I need a mechanic, someone to help me fix things around here, someone to teach this grumpy old man how to be kind again. Daniel's eyes grew wide. So, here is my offer, Benjamin said. How would you like to come here every day after school? You can sit in this library. You can do your homework at that desk by the window. You can read any book you want from these shelves. And in exchange, I will pay for your school, all the way through college. I will make sure you never have to worry about tuition, books, or supplies. Deal? Daniel looked at his mother. Maria was crying openly now, covering her mouth with both hands. She nodded through her tears. Daniel looked back at Benjamin. He smiled. A gap-toothed, beautiful, pure smile. Deal, Daniel said. He held out his small hand. Benjamin Crawford, the Hollywood mogul who had not trusted anyone in 20 years, took the small hand in his own wrinkled one and shook it firmly. We have a deal, Mr. Daniel Santos. Chapter 3. The Transformation. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Benjamin had experienced in decades. True to their agreement, Daniel came to the Crawford mansion every day after school. Maria would pick him up from Ogden Elementary School on the south side and take the train up to the Gold Coast, where Benjamin's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building overlooking Lake Michigan. At first, Mrs. Thompson, the head of household, was skeptical. She had worked for Mr. Crawford for 15 years and had never seen him show kindness to anyone. She expected this arrangement to last maybe a week before the old man grew tired of having a child underfoot. But something remarkable happened. Benjamin changed. Every afternoon at 3:30, Daniel would arrive with his backpack and sit at the antique desk by the window. He would spread out his homework, math worksheets, spelling lists, reading assignments, and work quietly while Benjamin sat in his leather chair pretending to read the newspaper. But Benjamin was not reading. He was watching. He watched Daniel struggle with his multiplication tables, his tongue sticking out in concentration. He watched Daniel sound out difficult words, his finger tracing the lines on the page. He watched Daniel draw pictures in the margins of his notebook, race cars mostly, always with 4 wheels. After about a week, Benjamin could not stand it anymore. You are doing that wrong, Benjamin said gruffly, pointing at Daniel's math homework. Daniel looked up, startled. I am sorry, Mr. Crawford, I will be quieter. No, no, Benjamin waved his hand. I do not care about noise, I care about wrong answers. You cannot multiply 7 times 8 and get 49. That is 7 times 7. 7 times 8 is 56. Oh, Daniel said, erasing furiously. Thank you. Here, Benjamin stood up and walked over to the desk. He pulled up a chair and sat down next to the boy. Let me show you a trick my father taught me when I was your age. And just like that, Benjamin Crawford became a tutor. Every afternoon he would help Daniel with his homework. He taught him multiplication tricks, helped him memorize spelling words, and read books with him. Benjamin had forgotten how much he enjoyed teaching. He had 3 sons, but he had been too busy building his empire when they were young. He had missed their childhoods entirely. Now he was getting a second chance. As the months passed, the library, once a cold, silent mausoleum of expensive books, became warm and alive. Daniel's laughter echoed off the walls. His questions filled the air. Mr. Crawford, why is the sky blue? Mr. Crawford, how do airplanes fly? Mr. Crawford, if you have so much money, how much is that in pennies? Benjamin found himself looking forward to 3:30 every day. He would wait by the window, watching for Maria and Daniel to arrive. And when they did, his heart, that frozen, bitter heart, would feel warm. The mansion staff noticed the change too. Benjamin stopped yelling at the cook. He started saying please and thank you to the housekeeper. He even smiled at the gardener. Mrs. Thompson pulled Maria aside one day in the kitchen. "I do not know what your son did to Mr. Crawford," Mrs. Thompson said, shaking her head in wonder. "But in 15 years, I have never seen that man happy. You have given us all a gift." Maria smiled. "Daniel has a way of seeing the good in people, even when they have forgotten it is there." Chapter 4. The Missing Wheel. 6 months after their first meeting, on a Saturday afternoon, Benjamin sat in his workshop, a space in the basement of the mansion that he had not used in years. He had asked Maria if Daniel could spend the day with him, and she had agreed. On the workbench in front of him sat Lightning, the little red race car with 3 wheels. Daniel stood beside him, watching with curious eyes. "You said you needed a mechanic to fix this car," Benjamin said, "so today we are going to fix it, together." "Really?" Daniel's face lit up. "But I thought he was yours now." "He is mine," Benjamin confirmed. "But every car needs a good mechanic, and I think his original mechanic should help me restore him." Benjamin had already done his homework. He had called a specialized toy restoration expert in New York, who had identified the exact model and year of the car, a 1985 die-cast model from a now-defunct company. The expert had located an identical car in a collector's inventory and purchased it for an absurd amount of money, then carefully removed one perfect wheel and shipped it to Chicago. But Benjamin was not going to tell Daniel that part. "First," Benjamin said, "we need to clean him up." Together, they carefully washed the car with soap and warm water, removing years of dirt and grime. Then Benjamin pulled out a set of tiny jeweler's tools and showed Daniel how to carefully remove the remaining 3 wheels. "Now," Benjamin said, "we paint." He had purchased model paint that perfectly matched the original red. For 2 hours they worked together, applying thin coats of paint, letting each layer dry, sanding gently, and painting again. When they were finished, Lightning looked brand new. Then came the final step. Benjamin opened a small velvet box. Inside sat the replacement wheel, but it was not an ordinary wheel. Benjamin had sent the original wheel to a jeweler with specific instructions. The jeweler had created an exact replica, but instead of plastic and metal, this wheel was crafted from white gold with a tiny ruby set in the center. "For the missing wheel," Benjamin said softly, showing it to Daniel. Daniel's eyes went wide. Is that real?" "Yes," Benjamin said, "it is real. Because Lightning is not just a toy, Daniel. He is a piece of your history. He belonged to your father. He deserves to be perfect." Together they carefully attached the gold wheel to the axle. It fit perfectly. Benjamin held up the restored car. It gleamed in the light, looking better than the day it was made. "There," Benjamin said, his voice thick with emotion. "Now, he is fixed." He handed the car to Daniel. "Wait," Daniel said, confused, "but I gave him to you." "And I am giving him back," Benjamin said, "as a gift, from one mechanic to another." Daniel threw his arms around Benjamin's neck and hugged him tightly. Benjamin, who had not been hugged by a child in 30 years, closed his eyes and hugged back. "Thank you, Mr. Crawford," Daniel whispered. "No," Benjamin whispered back. "Thank you." Chapter 5. The Will. 10 years passed, like pages turning in a book. The cold, silent mansion on the Gold Coast became a home. Daniel came every day after school, just as promised. Benjamin helped him with homework, taught him chess, took him to museums, and told him stories about business, history, and life. When Daniel graduated from 8th grade, Benjamin was in the audience, clapping louder than anyone. When Daniel started high school, Benjamin made sure he attended the best private academy in Chicago. When Daniel expressed interest in engineering, Benjamin arranged internships at his technology companies. Maria stopped working as a maid. Benjamin made her the director of the Crawford Foundation, a charitable organization he created to help widows and single parents in Chicago. She managed millions of dollars in donations every year, and she did it brilliantly. Benjamin's biological children, Richard, Thomas, and Margaret, rarely visited. When they did, it was only to complain that their father was wasting his fortune on strangers. "You are giving millions to charity," Richard complained during one Christmas dinner. "That is our inheritance you are throwing away." "You have your trust funds," Benjamin said calmly. "You will be fine." "But we could have more," Thomas argued. "Why are you giving everything to these people?" Benjamin looked at Daniel, who was now 17 years old, sitting at the dinner table and politely staying quiet during the argument. "Because," Benjamin said, "they gave me something worth more than money. They gave me back my soul." His children did not understand. They stormed out after dinner, and Benjamin did not see them again for months. That did not matter to him anymore. He had a family now, a real family. Maria and Daniel were the family he had chosen, and they had chosen him. On a quiet Tuesday morning in October, Benjamin woke up in his leather chair in the library. He had fallen asleep reading the night before. The autumn sun was streaming through the windows. Everything felt peaceful. He closed his eyes one more time, smiled, and did not wake up. Benjamin Crawford died at the age of 88, surrounded by books with a small toy race car, with one gold wheel sitting on the table beside him. Chapter 6. The Reading of the Will. 3 days later, the library was filled with people. Benjamin's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, sat behind the mahogany desk. The 3 biological children, Richard, Thomas, and Margaret, sat on one side of the room, dressed in black, checking their phones and whispering impatiently to each other. On the other side of the room sat Maria, now 42 years old, wearing a simple black dress, her eyes red from crying. Beside her sat Daniel, now 17, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that Benjamin had bought him for academic award ceremonies. He held something in his hand, turning it over and over with his thumb, a small red race car with one wheel made of gold. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of Mr. Benjamin Crawford," he began. Richard leaned forward impatiently. "Can we speed this up? We have flights to catch." Mr. Harrison ignored him and began reading. "To my children, Richard, Thomas, and Margaret, I leave the trust funds that were established for you at birth. Each fund contains $5 million. You have never visited me without asking for money, so I assume money is all you desire. You have your millions. Enjoy them." The 3 children looked satisfied. They started to stand up, preparing to leave. "Wait," Mr. Harrison said firmly. "There is more." They sat back down, annoyed. "As for the rest of my estate," Mr. Harrison continued reading, "my companies, my properties, my investments, my art collection, this mansion, and all remaining personal assets, I leave everything to the person who gave me something when I had nothing." The children looked confused. "Who?" Margaret demanded. "We are his family." "I leave it all," Mr. Harrison read, "to Daniel Santos." The room exploded. "What?" Richard jumped to his feet. "The maid's son? This is insane." "He manipulated our father," Thomas shouted. "This will is not valid." "We will sue," Margaret screamed. "We will fight this." Daniel sat silently, staring at the floor, his hand still holding lightning. He did not look happy. He looked sad. Mr. Harrison raised his hand for silence. "Mr. Crawford anticipated your reaction. He left a letter explaining his decision. He requested that I read it aloud." The lawyer unfolded a handwritten letter. The room fell silent. Mr. Harrison began to read in a clear, steady voice. "To my children and to the world, you measure wealth in dollars and properties. You think I am giving Daniel my fortune because I have lost my mind. But you are wrong. I am paying a debt. 10 years ago, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, I was not a Hollywood mogul. I was a beggar. I was cold, lonely, and spiritually bankrupt. So a 7-year-old boy saw me shivering. He did not see my money. He saw a human being. He covered me with his only jacket. He protected my cash when he could have stolen it. But the true debt was paid when he gave me his most precious possession, a broken toy car that belonged to his late father, to save his mother from my anger. He gave me everything he had, expecting nothing in return. That day, he taught me that the poorest pocket can hold the richest heart. He saved me from dying as a bitter, hateful man. He gave me 10 years of laughter, purpose, and love, so I leave him my fortune. It is a small trade because he gave me back my soul. To Richard, Thomas, and Margaret, you took from me your entire lives. Daniel gave to me. The difference is everything. To Daniel, use this wealth wisely, build things, help people, fix things that are broken, including people like me who have forgotten how to love. And never forget, your true inheritance is not money. It is the kindness your mother taught you and the goodness your father would be proud of. With love and gratitude, Benjamin Crawford. The lawyer finished reading. He looked at Daniel. Mr. Santos, Mr. Harrison said, Mr. Crawford also left you this. He handed Daniel a small velvet box. Daniel opened it with shaking hands. Inside, sitting on white silk, was a key. Attached to the key was a note in Benjamin's handwriting. This key opens the display case in the library. Inside you will find Lightning, who has been waiting for you. Keep him safe. He has a gold wheel now because he is priceless, just like you. B.C. Tears streamed down Daniel's face. He did not care about the mansion. He did not care about the vast fortune. He did not care about the angry people shouting across the room. He missed his friend. He missed the grumpy old man who taught him chess, helped him with calculus and believed in him when no one else did. Maria put her arm around her son. He loved you very much, Daniel. I know, Daniel whispered. I loved him too. Richard, Thomas, and Margaret stormed out of the library, threatening lawsuits. But their threats were empty. The will was ironclad. Every lawyer they consulted told them the same thing. Their father had the right to leave his fortune to whomever he chose. Chapter 7. The Legacy. Daniel Santos graduated from MIT at the age of 22 with degrees in mechanical engineering and business. He could have lived a life of luxury, doing nothing, spending his inheritance on mansions and yachts. But that was not who he was. Instead, Daniel used the Crawford fortune to build something meaningful. He started the Lightning Foundation, a non-profit organization that provided scholarships, mentorship, and resources to children from low-income families across Chicago, Detroit, and Los Angeles. He renovated the Crawford Mansion and turned it into a community center. The library, where he had once done his homework, became a free tutoring center. The dining room became a place where families could get hot meals. The bedrooms became temporary housing for families experiencing homelessness. Daniel still lived in the mansion, but now he shared it with hundreds of people every week. He also took over Benjamin's companies, but he ran them differently. He paid fair wages, provided good benefits, and created programs to promote employees from within. The companies thrived under his leadership. Every year on the anniversary of Benjamin's death, Daniel would sit in the old leather chair in the library. He would hold Lightning, the little red car with the gold wheel, and he would remember. One year, a journalist asked him, Mr. Santos, you are one of the richest men in America. How did you become so successful? Daniel smiled. He pulled the toy car from his pocket and showed it to the reporter. I did not earn my success, Daniel said. I inherited it, but not the way you think. He told the journalist the story, the rainy day, the test, the jacket, the chair, and the car. Benjamin Crawford taught me that wealth is not measured in bank accounts, Daniel said. It is measured in the lives you touch, the people you help, and the love you give. That is the real inheritance he left me. The journalist wrote the story. It went viral. Millions of people read it and shared it, and Daniel's inbox was flooded with messages. Some were from people who wanted to donate to the Lightning Foundation. Some were from people who wanted to volunteer. But many were from people who simply said, "Thank you for reminding me that kindness still matters." Chapter 8. Full Circle. 20 years after Benjamin's death, Daniel Santos stood in the same library where his life had changed. He was now 37 years old, married and a father of 2. His daughter Elena was 7 years old, the same age Daniel had been when he met Benjamin. She sat at the antique desk by the window, doing her homework, her tongue sticking out in concentration, just like her father used to do. Daniel walked over and sat down beside her. "You are doing that wrong," he said gently, pointing at her math worksheet. Elena looked up. "Really?" "Yes," Daniel smiled, "but that is okay. Let me show you a trick my friend Benjamin taught me when I was your age." As he helped his daughter with her homework, Daniel thought about the day that changed everything. He thought about the cold, bitter old man who had tested him. He thought about the broken toy car he had given away. He thought about the kindness his mother had taught him. And he thought about the lesson he had learned, that the smallest act of goodness can change the world. That evening, after Elena went to bed, Daniel sat in the leather chair. He took out Lightning from the glass display case and held it in his hands. The little car still gleamed, its gold wheel shining in the firelight. "Thank you, Benjamin," Daniel whispered to the empty room. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you for teaching me that the richest inheritance is not money, it is love." He placed the car back in the case and locked it. Tomorrow, he would go back to work. He would continue building schools, funding scholarships, and helping families, because that was what Benjamin had taught him to do. That was the legacy of a 7-year-old boy who chose kindness over cash, and a 78-year-old man who learned to love again. The end. The moral of the story. This story teaches us something profound about human nature and the power of goodness. Benjamin Crawford had everything money could buy, but he was empty inside. He had been hurt so many times that he built walls around his heart. He tested people, expecting them to fail, and they always did, until Daniel. Daniel had nothing. No father, no money, no warm jacket, but he had something more valuable than gold. He had a kind heart. When Daniel saw a cold old man, he did not see a Hollywood mogul. He saw a person who needed help, and he helped, even though it cost him something. That is the key lesson. Real kindness costs something. It is easy to be kind when it is convenient. It is easy to help when you have plenty. But true kindness means giving when you have little. It means sacrificing your comfort for someone else's need. Daniel gave his jacket when he was cold. He gave his father's toy when he thought it would save his mother. He gave without expecting anything in return. And that small act of selfless love changed everything. It changed Benjamin, turning a bitter man into a loving mentor. It changed Daniel's life, giving him opportunities he never dreamed of. And it changed the world because Daniel used his inheritance to help thousands of other children. The second lesson is this: never underestimate the power of a small act. Daniel did not do anything extraordinary. He just covered an old man with a jacket. He moved an envelope so it would not fall. He offered a broken toy. These were small things, but small things done with great love can crack the hardest hearts. You do not need to be rich to change the world. You do not need power or influence. You just need to be willing to give what you have, even if it is only a jacket, a kind word, or a moment of your time. The third lesson: true wealth is not what you have, but what you give. Benjamin had enormous wealth, but he was poor until Daniel taught him to love. Daniel had nothing, but he was rich because he knew how to give. In the end, the person who gave everything inherited everything, and the people who only took were left with nothing but their bitterness. So ask yourself, what kind of person are you? If you found $5,000 on a table and no one was watching, would you take it, or would you do the right thing? If you saw someone in need, would you help them, even if it cost you something? The world is watching, not with cameras or tests, but with the eyes of children who will learn from your example. Will you teach them that people are good? Or will you teach them that everyone is selfish? The choice is yours. Choose kindness, choose generosity, choose love, because in the end, those are the only things that matter. Final call to action. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that goodness still exists in this world, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week I share stories like this, stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us of what truly matters. Second, like this video. It helps this message reach more people, and in a world filled with negativity, we need more stories about kindness. Third, comment below and tell me, What would you have done if you were Daniel? Would you have taken the money, or would you have walked away? Be honest. Let's have a real conversation about integrity. And finally, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it is a friend who is going through a hard time. Maybe it is a family member who has lost faith in people. Maybe it is a child who needs to learn that kindness is the most powerful force in the world. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here, and thank you for being someone who still believes that one person can make a difference. Go out today and be someone's Daniel. Be the person who chooses kindness when no one is watching, because you never know. Your small act of goodness might just change someone's life forever. See you in the next video. God bless you all.